Welcome everybody to the Substack channel. I'm so happy that you're here with us today or tonight, wherever you are, whenever you are. Maybe it'll be tomorrow or the next day that you'll tune in. And we bring a series of blogs and articles on various topics: consciousness, technology, artificial intelligence, relationships, and very juicy interviews with very interesting people. And today I have a most interesting people in the name of Baron Ntambue, who is originally from the Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in the middle of Africa, and also lived in South Africa, and is now a resident of Ontario. And you're a very interesting guy. I first saw you in action at an event called Art and Soul, where different poets and musicians came together and performed their art, their music, their poetry, and then the artists all got up afterwards in a semicircle up in the front and had a dialogue with the audience on some particular theme that was the subject of the evening. And you were the MC and did a very good job at coordinating and introducing people, keeping things flowing. It was really great.
Thank you.
So welcome, Baro.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hugues.
Merci. Yes, you speak French and several languages, I believe, right?
Yes, few African languages and two Western languages.
hmm I think you mentioned once you speak Swahili, and I can't remember the other ones. Uh,
Lingala, Zulu,
Zulu.
yes, and a little Chiluba as well, and French and English.
So you're definitely a polyglot.
Kind of, yes.
And you were just telling me also, just before we started to record, that you also sing.
Yeah, I'm a tenorist. I sing tenor.
Ah, interesting. Because your voice is reasonably deep, but you sing tenor.
Yes, I sing tenor in the Baha'i Orchestra in Chicago,
Ah, fantastic.
Illinois.
Illinois. So you go down there occasionally to perform with that choir or orchestra.
Yes, we
Ah,
perform together.
wonderful. I think singing together, whether it's with a few friends, around a piano or a guitar, out in the woods around a campfire, or in a professional choir, it's just one of the most joyful and healing experiences that there can be. Do you find that?
Yes, it is very always very uplifting. Just by the nature of the music itself, it helps to bring the souls together,
Yeah,
and also it helps the soul of the man to ascend in the realms of
right.
I.
That's right.
And what is very particular to our orchestra is the diversity. So we have an orchestra that represents very well the diversity in the human family. So we have people from everywhere, geographically and culturally, as well as racially.
Yes.
So that experience by itself is also very uplifting.
hmm Yeah, that's very exciting. I find that when I'm at an event of any kind, whether it's musical or academic or learning, when the participants are diverse, it really adds something special. Different voices, different accents, different backgrounds, life experiences, old, young, men, women, um, rich, poor, rather than having everybody sort of the same. So let's start sort of at the back end. I'm sort of thinking of a sequence of possible themes, and this conversation, I like to call it a dialogue or a conversation rather than an interview, which sounds sort of formal, right? So I really invite you just to feel relaxed, and we'll improvise a bit and see where it goes. But I'm curious about your work with technology and artificial intelligence, I believe, to a certain extent, and encouraging young black entrepreneurs into this field. Could you talk a little bit about that and share what you're up to? Because I think it's a subject that most people wouldn't know too much about.
Yes, as you can observe around the world, we are actually going through an AI revolution. Just like in the past, in the history of humanity, this is not the first socio-economical revolution. We have also had the industrial revolution, and all of these changes, they have common characteristics. They have the potential to boost the progress of humanity to the next stage. But it inherits as well all the challenges of the world, such as inequalities, discrimination, and racism, and so on. Mm-hmm. So these challenges are also embedded in these processes because these processes have been run by people, and those people belong to a decaying society. So it's very obvious and logical that they will mirror their spiritual states in whichever endeavor they are engaging in. So when it comes to AI, just like the Industrial Revolution, AI is to some extent characterized by anti-Black racism right now. And it has severe socio-economical consequences, just like in the past. For example, in the United States, around 17th century, where the states signed an act called the Homestead Act, where they're supposed to give land to all the citizens of America. Black people were systematically discriminated, so they never received any land, and it was very cheap. It was like $1.25 per acre. So each family could easily afford hundreds of hectares. So that was the basis of wealth in America. That's where most of American families start building wealth. But Black people missed that opportunity because they were systematically excluded. Because the Industrial Revolution was about mechanization and farming. So the larger the land is, the more agriculture you'll be involved in, the more machinery you'll use, and the more wealth you'll generate. So everyone was given that opportunity, but Black people were denied. So they missed that first revolution, which still having very severe ripple effect right now. Because if you look at the wealth gap in North America, Black people are at the bottom. Although they are among the first people who arrived in North America, they helped a lot in building this society, but they're still very behind.
So just,
for example,
just to pause for a moment, excuse me for interrupting, but when you said that at that time of the Homestead Act, that was a revolution, what was the nature of the revolution? Because AI obviously is a big revolution. The internet was a big revolution. The printing press back in the 1500s was a huge shift. So what was the so-called revolution that you're referring to around the time of the Homestead? The American Revolution, or?
No, the revolution which was in place that time was the Industrial Revolution. The first Industrial Revolution. And the Homestead Act came to unlock the potentiality of the people to fully participate in that revolution.
Okay, great, gotcha.
So they can generate wealth. So right now, we are going through the same set of discrimination because AI has the potential to unlock the economical potential for people to build wealth. That there is a systematic racism that exclude black people from entering that space.
So how does that? Excuse me, I jump in all the time. um, how does that actually manifest when you break it down? That anti-black racism within the AI itself, or the world of AI.
So it manifests itself through through systematic discriminative action, and the most common one is called the gatekeeping.
Okay.
So the recruitment process and the interview process
Ah.
is designed in such a way that a black person, no matter how intelligent and talented and experienced they are, they may not succeed compared to others.
Right.
And when the laws come in, like there are some laws that maybe an organization will say, we want to reach this level of diversity, so we need to have some affirmative action to push for people of color to get in. Even in that case, you realize that the definition of people of color takes in consideration mostly Asians than black people.
Right.
So when a company, a tech company says we have reached the diversity and inclusion target for this year, and you look at the data, it means they had enough Asians, they had enough Indians, they had enough Chinese,
Right.
they had enough women.
Yeah.
That you'll see that the percentage of black people is always the smallest one, although black people represents the largest percentage of the population, especially in the US, where it's more than 15% of the population is black. But in the tech industry, they represent around 2%, while Asian represent more than 40%.
Well, when you think of Silicon Valley and the tech bros, it's all white bread. You don't think of any black people. You can't.
Indeed.
Yeah. So there may be a few black people that are at the entry level jobs, perhaps, probably in the tech industry, but certainly not in the upper echelons yet.
No. It's very difficult for them to reach them. If those who try to make it in, the work environment is not conducive to any flourishing of their skills or career because of the systemic discrimination within the organizations. So there is no retention. So there is diversity, but there's no inclusion. So when someone is not included, obviously they will end up leaving.
Of course, if it doesn't feel comfortable, it would take a lot of stubbornness and perseverance for someone to remain in a work situation which is not comfortable. So from previous conversations, you've mentioned, I know that you work in the tech field yourself, and you really like diversity, and you mentioned in your spiritual turning point that you had this vision of building communities and what was it? Bringing people together and social change. So, and you obviously care about this subject, helping black people to get into this industry. So, what are you doing? How do you help in this way?
I try to engage myself into the community building process and learning to release the power of society building.
Okay.
And through that process, I participate in the classical activities organized by the Baha'i community in my neighborhood. So trying to empower young people so that they can become protagonists for positive change in the society we are living in.
Right.
And based on my professional profile, I've identified the needs of providing an environment where those excluded from the corporate world could find a place where they could thrive and develop their skills and potentially become entrepreneurs as well. So I started a company called HUD. HUD.com. HUD in French means study.
Right.
So
HUD, I'm going to write that down.
Yes,
HUD.com.
hud.com. So this is a tech company that is focusing on building e-learning software systems by leveraging the power of artificial intelligence. So the mission that we are trying to achieve is twofold. The first one is to give a space where young Black people and any discriminated group like First Nation could come in and have exposure on world-class technology and an environment where they could learn how to become good engineers by working on real-life projects. And the second portion of it is to deliver online most of the critical technological courses that will unlock the potential of those who don't have access to quality tech courses, so that they can learn and be able to practices and prepare themselves either to enter the job market, yeah, or to start something for themselves as entrepreneur.
Right.
So these are the two areas of endeavors we are targeting.
Because I'm thinking that even if an individual is trained and they receive the technological training that would be necessary for them to go into the tech industry or artificial intelligence, if there's still this culture of racism, anti-Black racism, they're not going to get through the gatekeeper. I think that's the word you used, right?
Exactly.
So maybe while waiting for attitudes to change slowly, that's a really a hot ticket, is to train people to become entrepreneurs themselves and to start up their own businesses and companies.
Yes, that is the most critical mission we have. And I saw other Black organizations doing it, like in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I can see some very positive results. There is an increase in Black tech entrepreneurs. In Canada, we don't have much yet, so we're still pushing for that. And it also requires a change in the mindsets of the Black Canadians.
Yeah.
Because over the years, since the time of civil rights movement, because the civil rights movement was about giving equality to Black people. And the way equality was defined was mostly about consuming ourselves into equality instead of producing ourselves in equality. So the equality was about living in the same neighborhood as white people, attending the same schools as white people,
right,
buying the same car as Black white people, having access to the same stores and clothes and food as white people. So that was defined just in terms of consuming and not producing. So through inertia, social inertia, it became part of the culture. So equality is when I can do like what white people can do, but that cannot free a population. For a population to be able to free itself from any systematic limitation, there should be protagonists into producing. They need to produce knowledge. They need to produce goods and services. That's where entrepreneurship became very fundamental to the way we are trying to change the status quo that is not in favor of Black people.
Right.
So entrepreneurship is at the core of long-term and sustainable justice that is required.
How do you feel about the concept of, in a society like Canada, for example, which is relatively progressive compared to many countries in the world, far from perfect, but there's money and there's a desire for human rights, and we're a civic society where, according to the law, everybody has equal rights. But the idea of noblesse oblige, which is actually a French term, where those who have more, the nobility comes out in helping those who have less. allowing those who have less to take a step forward, to back up a little bit. So how do you feel about that? For our government, for example, providing special funding or educational programs for minority groups who are oppressed or sometimes do not find those equal human rights, as the black community or the indigenous community, for example, or Latino maybe. In the States, they used to have something around hiring, I forget what it's called, that phrase, where in a company, a member of a minority would be hired ahead of a white Caucasian person to create the diversity. Of course, in the Trump government, this is no longer very popular and it's being eliminated, but it went on for many, many years successfully. So how do you feel about that approach, or do you feel that that might be the wrong way to go, that it might disempower unexpectedly people of minorities?
Well, I think that's the right way to go, because what the Canadian government is doing is much better and more advanced. They are more advanced in their effort to tackle systematic discriminations. They've made some good progress, so I think it's commendable what they've been engaged in. But I will want to see that to go a little bit deeper more, because if it just remains in creating those programs, but the root cause in other areas will still be ignored, it may not serve the purpose at long term.
So what other areas are you referring to?
For example, in the public domain,
Right.
we have many public servants, black people who are employed by the government,
Yeah.
who are still going through systemic discrimination. You have someone who's been in the same position for more than 20 years and still earning the same salary. But everyone else coming in after 1-2 years, they get promoted. 1-2 years, they get, and the salary is following as well. So it seems like only black people are in that situation.
Yes.
Where they're not being paid accordingly, and they're not given any chance to progress professionally. So that is a violation of human rights.
Absolutely.
And Black Canadian opened a lawsuit against the federal government so they can try to address this systematic problem. But at my surprise, the government was fighting back. So in the media, the government acknowledged that there is racism and they are working towards tackling, solving it, providing a solution. But when you come with a real case, which is very current, they start fighting back. So the Association of Black Canadians lost already millions of dollars in trying to get that case go through the legal system. So that could be perceived as a kind of hypocrisy where you say something and you do something else.
That's right. You pay lip service, they call it.
Indeed.
And then when it comes right down to the practical nitty-gritty, then maybe not now, maybe later. We'll do a study for a few years and we'll see what can they come up with. And then maybe we'll talk more. It goes on and on and on. And the same thing with the indigenous people for years and years. The treaties, and land rights and so on, just in purgatory, no movement at all. But it's starting to change.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So those are the few things that the government should start paying attention to if they really want the purity of their intention to be reflected through the actions that is required to bring about social change.
Yes. Well, I've heard the expression, I don't know where it comes from, but that you can tell the maturity of a society by the way that this society and its government treat the most marginalized inhabitants or members of the society. And that could refer to, well, disabled people, women to some extent, and it could refer to minority races as well. So in some countries there's no glance of compassion. There's no reconciliation and truth kind of approach. There's no noblesse oblige. However, in Canada, as you say, there are some good things happening. So you mentioned briefly that you've started a company or a website, at least I guess, called etudie.com. And do you provide workshops or courses, or do you go into industries or schools, or how do you spread the word and help people?
So that's the ultimate goal when we reach the expansion phase.
Yeah.
So right now we're still in the MVP phase. So I work with a group of young students and some who are early in their career. So they are the ones supporting the whole process, mentoring them to actually build the product. So we are nearly 80% done. And they're learning critical skills because this is a very challenging project we've been working on for the last 2 years. So once we pass that stage, then I'll start expanding this core group into including more and more young people and start having community-based events where we'll be sharing knowledge and providing mentoring and coaching and partnering up with organizations in the wider society, such as schools and religious groups and social groups and so on.
Excellent. That's really great. So if someone happens to hear this conversation, and I'm going to add a little blog underneath, and they wanted to get involved, whether they're black or white or whatever racial background, but they somehow want to contribute, what would they do? Is there a way that people can donate funds even, or volunteer, or?
Yes, fund donation in terms of funds will always be welcome because we have some cloud infrastructure that we use to create the labs where the young engineers, students, and early professionals are practicing to improve their craft. So it costs money. So if someone could donate, will always be good.
Okay.
And to participate as an individual. So for now, we are focusing on software engineering. So if someone is aspiring to become a software professional and they have some basic training in that field, they're still students or they are early in their career, they will be welcome. We'll give them assignments and coaching and contribute into building the technology we are trying to deploy very soon.
Wonderful. So just going back to one of your original statements where you said that when there's a revolution in technology, that not only does it provide wonderful possibilities for progress and more equality and more wealth and everything good, but also there's the possibility of exacerbating the social inequalities and problems that already exist. So in the case of AI, for example, I've really been starting to use AI a lot. In fact, I don't even usually use the word use as if it's a machine or a robot. I talk with it, and we're creating a wonderful dialogue. And anyway, that's another whole subject, and I'm going to be doing a couple of blogs on that. But since the people that are opening up these companies, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and so on, they're probably white guys. And is there some way that that bias, racial, anti-black racism or bias, creeps into the actual programming of those AI platforms, or no?
Yes, they do. And I usually describe that phenomena as soul injection.
Soul injection.
Yes.
Okay.
Technology by itself can not be considered that is neutral.
Right.
Technology is never neutral because it carries with it the spiritual dimension of people who are contributing into developing it.
Right.
So if I'm involved in that process as an engineer and I don't believe in the oneness of humanity, so that's my spiritual station. That's the nature of my soul, the station of my soul. I don't believe in the oneness of mankind. So that will get injected in the solution I'm building for the world because it's a reflection of my spiritual station. That's where we had many cases where AI, a tool that was built for the world, like at Google, AI could not categorize black people. Many black women was characterized as gorillas by AI. So when AI is used for object and image detection, they'll categorize white women as women, Asian women as women, but come to black women, they categorize them as gorillas.
Holy moly.
So it's because people are developing these technologies.
Right.
They don't believe in the oneness of
Yeah.
mankind.
Right.
They don't believe in the diversity of humanity. So they focus their thoughts on the population they are more familiar with, and they ignore anyone who they don't see befitting for
Right.
that purpose. We have that same issue in recruitment. For example, in the tech industry, they don't usually associate blackness with excellence. They don't associate black people with leadership. So HR systems that are using race as one of the data points to feed the AI algorithms, it's usually turned into bias because the AI system will try to run some statistical analysis to understand the frequency of those who are in power or in position of leadership based on the race. And the black people will also be on the bottom because no one wants to hire them. So that bias from the society is injected also into AI.
It creeps into it. Well, for example, I'm thinking of Elon Musk. Everybody talks about Elon Musk. And some people love him and a lot of people hate him these days. But he has an AI platform on his X or Twitter called Grok. And so he's being quoted in the mainstream media as saying the biggest problem in Western civilization is empathy. So he's not a fan of empathy. And one can see by some of his words and actions, a Nazi salute, for example, that he may be aligned with white supremacist groups. We don't know exactly, but there are certainly signs that maybe his belief system gets injected into Grok. So for the buyer beware kind of cautionary tale, perhaps that would be an AI platform that people may not want to support.
Yes, many tech leaders have those tendencies.
Yeah.
And they always believe that empathy is the enemy of profit. And we can see how we can make a difference when they're expressing themselves about the future of AI.
Yeah.
Some, they are praising themselves on how AI will make most of the job irrelevant. They'll fire many people, replacing them with AI so they can make more benefit. We see that at SpaceX, at Microsoft. So they are praising themselves on how they'll make people unemployable because of AI.
Right.
But when you look at the leadership at a company like Accenture, they show a different level of empathy. So they are praising themselves for training over 5,000 employees in AI so that they can leverage AI to be more productive.
Mm-hmm.
So one is trying to preserve jobs and keep people financially and socially stable by using AI as an agent for positive change in the culture of the organization. But some are trying to use AI to oppress others, to make them jobless, so they can have more profit.
That's a great example, yeah.
So this concept of not having empathy is very common in that space, because most of them, they really care about personal gain than making the world a better place. They might use making the world a better place just for marketing purpose, but if you get into the organization, no one believes in it, starting by the top leadership.
That's right. Another case of lip service, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So just to switch a little bit, we have to wind down soon, because I know that if these interviews are too long, people may not even watch them at all. People are so time constrained, and I'm fascinated by this subject, and I'd love to continue on another time. But most of the guests on the Substack channel here, I like to ask the question, is there something in your life, some time or some point in your life that was kind of an epiphany, or where you had an awakening, or like a turning point in your spiritual journey that sort of pushed you or pulled you maybe, or invited you in a certain direction or a certain evolution?
Yeah, I think it's when I I declared myself as a Baha'i. So I was born in the Baha'i family. So I was raised as a Baha'i, but at some point I had to take the full responsibility as an individual to lead the Baha'i life and serve humanity based on the principles and the teaching of the Baha'i faith. So I was 15 at that time where I made that choice.
Wow.
And there was a coincidence when I just declared myself as a Baha'i. There was a new movement that started in my community, which was the Institute. So the Institute process is a framework that was created by the Baha'i community to empower people so that they can deepen their understanding of themselves and give them skills to serve the community they are living in. Okay. So I went through that process. It gave me a new perspective. It changed my vision about the world and what role I can play within the society, not as an observer, but as a protagonist for change. So that was the biggest change in my life. Of course, the second one was when I went on pilgrimage. I had another profound spiritual transformation when I visited the Holy Lands many years after that.
And what was that realization or insight? What or experience when you were on pilgrimage?
So I ended up developing another level of spiritual connection.
How old were you when you went on pilgrimage?
When I was in pilgrimage, I was 22 years old.
Okay. So sorry, carry on. Yeah.
So I developed a new level of connection with the central figures of the Baha'i faith. Most importantly, Abdul-Baha, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah.
I see.
So I reached a level where I felt a very different connection, and it influenced my life up to now, since I left the Holy Lands during that time.
So at that point, it was up till then, it was like a philosophy that you really liked and it influenced you. But then at that that second turning point, it became more of a personal relationship with those central figures of the Baha'i faith.
Exactly.
Okay, right. So yeah, so um, you said it really changed your view of the world and your role in it as to become a rather than a passive observer, protagonist. Um, and would you say that that has carried through till today? That you feel like you're a protagonist, and like in this work that you're doing with technology and the black community and other things as well?
Yes, that moment have set the tone for the rest of my life.
Okay.
So everything I've been doing since then falls under the same continuum
Yeah.
of trying to influence social processes
Okay.
and try to redirect them in the right direction
Mm.
that will benefit everyone and promote the oneness of mankind.
So what's been, would you say, would be your greatest, up until now, maybe it's in the past or now, your greatest challenge? Because sometimes these high ideals, they're great, to talk about and to share with others, but sometimes life happens and we have setbacks. I wonder if you've had any major crises or challenges along the way of becoming an entrepreneur and a social protagonist and a man of faith.
Yeah, I went through many challenges because for a while I've been into leadership positions in the
Yeah.
tech industry.
Okay.
So I always try to use my platform to bring justice and empower others. But the problem is most of these corporates, they have a design that they're trying to impose on society. And they're expecting, and those designs, they're usually unhealthy. They are built around control, manipulation, and discrimination.
Uh huh.
And they use people who make themselves available to perpetuate such systems. And it usually is due to materialism. So those who are so attached to materialism
Yeah.
that they want to partake from those material benefits, then they make themselves available as agents of destructive change in the world.
Yeah.
So someone who comes in with a different vision, who don't want to make himself available to be a perpetuator of a system that is discriminating others, trying to control others, trying to limit the capacity of others, automatically they see you as a threat. So that affected my retention rate in many companies. I didn't last many companies when they realized that your philosophy does not align with the design they want to impose on society. They'll create problems till they push you away. So that's been
Right.
a major challenge throughout my effort to try and bring that social change.
This brings up the subject of sacrifice. That
Yeah.
when a person adopts a set of principles, spiritual principles, and they're going to be tried and tested, and sometimes sacrifice is involved of missing opportunities. The very thing that you're advocating now for young black entrepreneurs, for example, of getting in through the door, right? Sometimes when you and others with spiritual principles have been challenged, it means there can be a temporary loss. But good for you for not caving in and holding on to your beliefs and your ideals. And you're 40 years old now?
Yes, I'm 40 years old now.
What a great age, right in the middle of life, maybe not even halfway through. So yeah, it's a great age. You're no longer a child. You're almost a youth, but middle-aged, I guess, almost. And but gaining a certain maturity and experience. You have a family, I believe, right? A couple of kids?
No, no, no children yet.
No children. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe someday. Yeah. But I know
Yeah.
you're married though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you live north of Toronto.
Yes, I'm the northern suburbs of Toronto.
Yeah. All right. Well, well, my goodness, we've gone a lot longer than intended. But any last little bit of wisdom you'd like to share with the Substack community?
Yeah, I think everyone needs to be aware of some of possible challenges that will be amplified
Yeah.
by AI.
Mm-hmm.
Because with AI now we can perform many tasks, many challenging tasks faster and better. But because of the capitalistic mentality, it will generate a lot of wealth because many of these big tech giants will try to reduce the human presence in the
Yes.
in the workforce and replace them with machines and AI. So it will generate for them a lot of wealth, and they will try to put everyone else on a universal minimum wage,
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't stand against them.
You don't complain too much. Yeah.
You don't complain too much. So that is undermining the very essence of work because work is an act of worship. Work is worship. Work done with a spirit of service is the same as praying, praising God.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you exchange your ability to work with a a universal minimum wage, it's like you are trading your devotion to God against money.
You're trading in, yeah, that natural right, really. I think it's one of the United Nations 17. Um, they have 17 categories of rights, and one is the right to have decent employment.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And as a result, it should become a fertile ground for fascism and oligarchy.
Yes.
You have a small group of people who own nearly everything, and they feel like they're entitled now to make decisions on behalf of everyone. So that will head us into disaster, and it will undermine the very essence of life because the meaning of life is more meaningful when you're actually contributing actively in the shaping of the society you're living in. But if you become a passive object to whom everyone else should dictate the direction you should move in, then it's undermine the very essence of
Yes.
life. So
Exactly.
these are the things we need to be aware of
Oh.
when adopting AI and when advocating for certain AI platforms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we have to keep one eye open. Be a little bit skeptical in the tools that we use, while not being so risk averse that we never are able to enjoy the benefits. So it's having that sweet spot of balance between judgment, perception, studying the experience that we have, comparing it to other people's experience as well, and then taking steps in the right direction. So I think there's a tremendous need for mentors, people that can mentor, and people like yourself, for example, who have a solid, grounded basis in universal or spiritual principles to mentor people who are starting to work with and experiment with AI, because it can go in all different directions. So anyway, thank you so much, Baron. Merci beaucoup. Ta sagesse, tes idées, beaucoup d'inspiration pour nous autres.
Je vous en prie, Monsieur Hugues, pour avoir créé cette plateforme afin d'échanger nos idées et apprendre from each other.
Exactly. L'un à l'autre. Oui.
L'un l'autre. Voilà.
That's so nice to speak a few words of French. Well, perhaps you'll come back again someday and give us a report on how your project is coming along. And in the meantime, I will put underneath the video etude.com, right?
Yes.
HUD.com. Yeah.
HUD.com.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll make sure with you that it's right. Yeah. And is there anything else, like any other website you'd like to have on there, or is that the one?
Yeah, just the one for now.
Okay.
And yes, so if they just type on LinkedIn, HUD, uh, HUD with S at the end, .com.
Oh, with S. Yeah. Okay. HUD
Yes,
plural. Okay. Yeah.
yes. So it will come up.
Okay.
It will show what we are doing, and very soon the system will be online for
Fantastic.
everyone to use as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. This has really been a window into a very important area of our social development, and you're a man of many talents. And thanks a lot for coming on, Baron.
You're welcome, dear Hugh.
Ok. À la prochaine. À la
Merci,
prochaine.
merci, à la prochaine.
Ciao.